Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Atheist Experience. Here we are, providing a tonic for whatever was just on before us. We're very happy that you joined us on this lovely weekend. I am your host, Martin Wagner. My co-host is Mr. David Clark. And this show is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels, which is downtown on 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca, with the exception of the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series in the Longhorn Room of First Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Our next lecture will be March the 3rd, I believe.
That's correct.
Don't know who the speaker will be yet. Of course, we will tell you as soon as we know. And for more information on ACA, you can visit our fine website at atheist-community.org or call our voicemail at 371-2911. The Nonprofits is an internet radio show that plays every Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. on the atheistnetwork.com website. The host is Jeff D. Co-hosts are Vic Farrow and Mary McManamy, and your web browser will require the Real Player plugin in order to hear the audio stream. Show's a lot of fun. I was on it yesterday as a guest, and it was kind of neat to be on, and it's just an hour of atheists talking about current events and stuff. They don't have live call-in, but they have a chat feature that you can log on to and participate in a IRC sort of real-time chat while the show's going on, and sometimes they respond to stuff in the chat room on the air. Speaking of the nonprofit, the Atheist Experience, episodes of the Atheist Experience and of the Nonprofits from the month of January are now available on a CD-ROM. These have been put together by our member Ashley Perrion. Thank you for the fine work. The television show as well as the Nonprofits shows are available in QuickTime format, and Nonprofit shows I think are actually available are on here as MP3s. And for more information, you may send an email to atheist@mac.com. This is a neat little way. This is just sort of put together by Ashley of his own volition, a nice little way to archive the show.
Now that also has the rally.
Yeah, and I think this has the video, or is it just the audio from the rally? It's just the audio tracks from the January 12th?
January 12th.
January 12th, the Capitol Steps Separation of Church and State rally that we held that was very well received. And speaking of the rally, the video of that, I failed to mention it last week on the show, but it has played on ACAC, I believe on channel 16 at some point in the afternoon. I think like last Thursday it was on at noon, and I know that they've scheduled it again for another Thursday, I believe at about that time frame. It's just the complete tape from the rally, all the speakers in their entirety, and I think a little bit of the footage where you went around to the monument, the Ten Commandments monument,
that's nice,
and said a few words about it.
Yeah, so I didn't see it when they put it on originally.
So Russell Glasser, our producer, will know more about that, and we'll try to maybe get an announcement up on the atheist-community.org webpage for when that tape will be playing next. You can record it if you like, or just watch it. There it is. Let's see. Godless Gamers takes place every Monday night, 7 o'clock p.m., home of Jeff D. and Manda, although Jeff was sick yesterday and wasn't appearing on Nonprofits, so I don't know if we're going to have a Godless Gamers tomorrow, but maybe by the end of this show I will know a little something more about that. Atheist Happy Hour takes place Wednesday evenings at about 7:30 p.m. at Antonio's Tex-Mex near the intersection of I-35 183. It's a very nice way for people who can't make the early morning meetings to hook up with some atheists and just have a little social time. There will be a creation-evolution debate. This ought to be fun. This is taking place on the UT campus this coming Friday at 6:30 p.m. in building UTC room 2.112A. I think I had some classes in there many years ago. And this is sponsored by Helping Austin Area Schools, which is a registered student organization at UT. With concerns about the quality of science education in Austin area public schools. And again, this ought to be interesting. Our member Charles Tabany has been getting tickets for those of us in the group. They've extended a special invitation to non-believers and and people who are supportive of science, because usually these kinds of debates, tend to be packed with Christians. So I'd like to see ACA members out there and force all of us wearing our ACA t-shirts and I'm a little reluctant about these kinds of things, though, in the first place.
It's hard to do, and it's a limited forum.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of times you end up not actually debating the issue. It's more of redirections a lot of times that go from the stray from the main issue, which causes a problem sometimes.
Yeah. Well, there's the underlying premise of these kinds of debates, which is that scientific truths can somehow be determined just by popular opinion. That's not how you do science.
Right.
Yeah, and so it doesn't matter if there's like, there's 500 Christians in the audience and only 50 atheists, and they're cheering louder than we are. It doesn't matter. That that
or the reverse, or if the Christian is debating and is not as good a speaker as the atheist that's debating, it may appear that the atheist won the debate, or vice versa if the Christian's a better speaker, but that has nothing to do with whether we're talking about valid science or not anyway.
Yeah, because debates are all pretty much about who's better with rhetoric and public speaking and persuasive, speaking skills. But that's what, they're on the creationist side. They're, these kinds of debates, it's like a little cottage industry that they have. And they get guys who do the circuit, right, of universities and museums and things like that, wherever they have these debates. And these guys are basically professional debaters. They're very skilled in, there's the forensic debate and how you present your side and you get these fellows like Philip Johnson is a big name in creationism, intelligent design creationism. But he's a lawyer. He doesn't know jack about biology, but he's excellent at rhetoric and at public speaking and presenting an argument because he has the training as a lawyer. But anyway, so actually engaging in these debates is. I'm dubious about because it gives some cachet to this whole idea that the creationists have that if we can that just the act of debating at all is how you determine the truth or falsehood of a particular scientific issue. It's not. It has nothing to do with it. But but it kind of gives off a validity. It gives a validity to that idea, which I don't think it deserves. But I don't know. But it still ought to be fun, and you can't just turn your back on these folks. But anyway. Let's see what else is happening. I think that's pretty much it for announcements. Again, if you just want more information on ACA, please visit our website, atheist-community.org. And let's go on over, David, let's see what's happening in the news around the world. Yeah.
Okay, I actually have quite a few things news-wise today. Let's start with Legislators back church speech bill. It has, of course, been illegal for ministers to endorse political candidates. If they did, they would lose their tax-exempt status as a religious organization.
From the pulpit, they can't.
Right, they can. Right now, they can certainly, outside of their church affiliation, they can participate in any political, activity they wanted.
Sure.
Well, religious conservatives are starting a campaign to remove the prohibition. Representative Walter Jones, Jr., Republican, North Carolina, has a bill, the Houses of Worship Political Speech Protection Act, which would permit churches and other houses of worship to engage in political campaigns. The bill has gathered 112 co-sponsors, all but 4 of them Republicans. Of course, Dick Armey was the majority leader, and Majority Whip Tom DeLay, Irving and Sugar Land. So
who makes no bones about being a fundamentalist, neo-fascist.
Yes. Opponents say the bill is little more than a strategy by conservative religious leaders such as Christian broadcaster Pat Robertson, who, of course, they lost their tax-exempt status. The Christian Coalition lost it because of that.
They were openly partisan.
That's right. To mobilize churches on behalf of conservative candidates. Robertson recently had Representative Jones as a guest on his 700 Club show and encouraged his viewers to contact their legislators to support the bill. Barry Lynn, Executive Director for Americans United of Separation of Church and State, said that if we change this prohibition, we're going to see politicians running around seeking support of churches and hoping that they can curry favor with those churches by promising them money and favors, which is, churches have gone away in the past number of years from being churches and into being machines and businesses. You get churches, well, they can make money by opening a daycare center. So they want to open a daycare center. So then they say, well, the Religious Land Use Protection Act, it violates our religious freedom if we can't open our daycare center, even though the zoning says they can't. So there's lots of ways in which churches are getting away from being churches and deciding that instead we're going to be a machine of some sort, either a money-making machine or a political machine.
But try to tax them and watch them
That's
go
right.
into apoplexy.
That's right. They want to be able to do everything that every taxed business does in America.
And just not be
It would just not be taxed, because then we're violating their religious freedom. So we'll of course be watching for this. It's looking very interesting here. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's one that I just knew would happen. Judge Nixes school Bible classes. Now we talked about this on the show 2-3 weeks ago, I think. The Tennessee county that grappled with religion in the classroom during the Scopes monkey trial in 1925 was ordered by a federal judge Friday to stop holding Bible classes in its elementary schools. The classes have been offered in Rhea County, Tennessee for 51 years. They violate the constitutional separation of church and state, according to U.S. District Judge Alan Edgar. The 30-minute classes were held weekly for about 800 students in kindergarten through fifth grade. And as I mentioned on the show before when we brought this up, I've seen some of the actual lesson plans for the classes, and they were blatantly unconstitutional. The instructors for the classes had to turn in lesson plans, and they said, today we're going to teach the children that, you know, Jesus is their Lord and Savior, and He died for them, and they need to live for Him, and they need to submit their will to Jesus. And one of them...
You don't get more unconstitutional
Yeah,
than
and
that.
this one was probably the most telling.
That's just Sunday school. That's just flat out
One
Sunday
of the
school.
lesson plans said we are planning to make Jesus-type Christmas cards for the children. And the principal of the school wrote a note on the lesson plan and gave it back to the instructor, and the note said, this is a good idea, but just make sure the kids don't take anything home. So, so they knew, they knew.
Yeah, they knew they were,
the identities of the parents who sued have not been disclosed.
Of course not. I'm sure
for good reason. They would be faced with much harassment and probably danger.
Yeah.
A branch of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a nonprofit First Amendment organization, was also a plaintiff. The judge ruled that county school officials acted with both purpose and effect to endorse and advance religion in the public schools.
Yeah.
So the Rhea County School Board Chairman John Mincy said the decision would be appealed. We still feel like we haven't had our day in court.
Well, comparative religions class is one thing, but that's just a Sunday school class.
These were
open proselytizing.
It was not the teachers from the school that led the classes. It was students from Dayton Bible College, a conservative Christian college, that had been teaching the class. It was very blatant.
Yeah, they just seem to think they have this eminent domain over all the kids of America. They just have this. They have this right to just come in and indoctrinate anybody's kid.
Yes.
Regardless of what the parents want or not, or what. Regardless of whether the parents may be Jewish or Muslim or Wiccan or atheist or what. They just seem to think that they have this basic fundamental right to slip past parents and just go right for the kids.
Now we have another one. Saratoga Springs. Where would Saratoga Springs be?
Florida.
Sounds Florida.
Sounds Floridian. Yeah.
The family of Dorothy Nolan school kindergartner Kayla Broadus thinks the Saratoga Springs City School District was out of balance on January 15th. A teacher told Kayla not to ask classmates to say grace with her before having a snack. The family filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. A federal judge ordered that the school allow Kayla to ask her friends to say grace. I agree with this ruling.
This is one of these gray areas you get into where, if it wasn't a case of the school sponsoring the thing, if this girl wanted to just say grace to express her
But this is just one student asking another student, would you like to pray with me over our lunch?
Well, then I think that she's protected by the First Amendment.
Yes, definitely. The Education Department's website says students may also speak to and attempt to persuade their peers about religious topics, just as they do with regard to political topics. School officials, however, should intercede to stop student speech that constitutes harassment aimed at a student or a group of students. which
Yeah.
I agree with.
Now again, was this like just in the kids in the cafeteria or
Yes,
something?
yeah, this was a kindergartner having her lunch. Her little kindergartner friend was next to her, and she said, "Let's pray over our lunch."
Well, that's clearly her First Amendment right to do that.
Yes, definitely. I certainly agree with that ruling.
But what they're saying, though, that is if little Christian girl went on to harass and give her classmates a hard time, if they decided
did not pray with her,
then the teacher that would be acceptable for her to come down on the little girl and say, "Hey, you can't call them bad names because they won't." But if she's just asking,
right?
If you're talking, then that's perfectly protected.
Now, the school district superintendent, Leon Reed, said that what little Kayla did might have been harassment, which I don't agree with. Kindergartners are apt to go along with friends, even if their parents would rather they not say grace. Probably true. What if one of the families is Jewish or Catholic and doesn't pray that way? Reed said. Parents should make that decision. The problem is that parents can't be with their children 24/7, and in the real world, people have a right to come ask you if you want to do this, or even try to persuade you per se for their religion, and you have a right to say yes or no.
Right.
So yeah, I don't agree that was harassment.
No, I don't think it was. And also, if you're getting in with like kindergarten age kids too, I mean it's a different realm, right?
Right.
Like I remember it was a couple years ago when some like 6-year-old boy in the kindergarten class kissed a little girl on the cheek.
Yes, and
they busted his ass for like sexual harassment.
Yes.
And you're like, good, these are 6-year-old children.
Well, that's an extension of the zero tolerance policy.
That's political correctness gone
which is
way overboard.
It's crazy.
So when you're talking about kindergarten kids, and you want to say grace, then that's hardly. I'm more concerned about the guys from the Bible college wanting to like move in and set up shop. Yeah.
Right, which is what they did.
And because little 6-year-old kids, they don't have their mental defenses in order to like they're just a blank slate, and you can get in there and so if you have some hardcore proselytizing, they can't defend themselves against. They don't even know what they're hearing.
Right.
They just hear some adult telling them this is the way it is, and
yes,
so they're very vulnerable to that. But kids being kids is a different thing.
Okay, now on to the next one. Now, for those of you who think that us atheists all just want to squash religion in any manner, we agree with this ruling. The kindergartner has a right to ask others to pray with her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep the school out.
President Bush recently held the National Prayer Breakfast.
Yeah, you're right.
Which, of course, we disagree with as being a violation of the Constitution. Certainly when Thomas Jefferson was president, he would not have done this, as he refused to even give things such as a simple Thanksgiving proclamation.
Yeah. But who is it that wants to put up a statue somewhere? I'll have to dig that article up, but somebody wants to put up some sort of monument. And this would include a statue of Ben Franklin, George Washington, and Thomas Jefferson kneeling in prayer, which is flagrantly unhistorical. Okay,
yes,
I mean that's certainly nothing that Thomas Jefferson ever would have been seen doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson actually did attend church services.
Yeah.
Was it Thomas Jefferson or George Washington? They attended church services but left without participating in communion.
Yeah.
I think that was Washington.
Yeah.
Which was quite a scandal in the day.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
leave without partaking in communion.
Yeah, Jefferson was harassed left, right, and center for the very act of criticizing established religion.
Yes, he was. I believe they even had during the presidential debates of the time, saying if you vote for Jefferson, you're going to get an atheist and no Christianity in the United States, and if you vote for me, you're gonna get a Christian. So
here it was. It says this is from the Monticello.org website, which is the
official website of
George Jefferson's estate. So
Monticello.
I'm sorry. Okay. Monticello.
You're not very refined.
I must not be. No. He was raised as an Anglican, it says, but was influenced by English deists such as Bolingbroke and Shaftesbury. Thus, in the spirit of enlightenment, Jefferson made the following recommendation to his nephew Peter Carr in 1787. Question with boldness even the existence of God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. So so Jefferson believed in God, he believed in a supreme being, but he did not believe that Jesus was divine, and he certainly wouldn't have been caught dead kneeling in Christian prayer for any reason.
I don't think so. If he did, it probably would have been quite a different prayer than I think, what most Christians today would imagine, because he was
probably
very deistic.
very different form. But anyway.
So we've got the National Prayer Breakfast going on, which we've already said we disagree with. But I have to give, well, before I give kudos, President Bush urged Americans of all faiths to turn to prayer as they struggle through this time of testing after the terrorist attacks. Now this brings an interesting question. Does he mean just the events have tested us in terms of how we react or how we feel about America, or who knows what, or does he mean that we are being put to some sort of spiritual test by God? It's not very clear. It wouldn't be out of bounds from things that he would have said before, that America's being tested, I would suppose.
Yeah. Although if his point is that we are being spiritually tested by God by these terrorist attacks, you just stop and think that he's painting a really ugly portrait of his God there.
He is. And what I want to know is, are there Cliff's Notes for this test? Are we going? Is there any kind of a study guide?
No idea.
And what are the objective standards for grading? I'm just not sure. Okay.
You got me.
Bush said religious faith teaches tolerance, humility, and the value of community service, which it certainly can. There are aspects of religion that teach that, and on this show we like to present the aspects that teach the opposite, because they're there too. We'll balance, a little yin and yang.
Yeah.
Okay. Every religion is welcomed in our country, said President Bush. All are practiced here. Many of our citizens profess no religion at all. Our country has never had an official faith, which is very interesting, because I believe Bush has probably said in the past that we're a Christian nation. I don't know that his father did.
Yeah. I don't know if Bush if Shrub has said that. But Bush Senior, when he in like 1987, when he was president, he came right out and said,
"We're a Christian nation, and atheists don't count."
Yeah, atheists should
aren't
not
citizens
be
or patriots.
Aren't citizens or patriots.
That's right.
Which is so that's like an openly bigoted statement against unbelievers from Bush Senior. But again, as Russell pointed out yesterday on the radio show, that was sort of an off-the-cuff remark. And George W.'s handlers are far too smart to let him say anything off the cuff.
That's right. They're trying to rein him in as much as possible. However,
make sure everything he says is rehearsed, and
his phrase there, "Our country has never had an official faith," certainly lays waste to the many statements by politicians and all kinds of people, even now today, that say we have an official Christian history in this country. So Bush better watch out.
Yeah, he may.
They're going to be turning on him.
I wonder if there's been a reaction to these remarks from like Robertson and Falwell and those guys.
Yeah, I have not heard anything. Yet we have all been witnesses, said President Bush, these past 21 weeks, to the power of faith to see us through the hurt and loss that has come on to the country. Now, I have to give President Bush kudos for mentioning that many of our citizens profess no religion at all, which that's just kind of a truthful statement. I really give him kudos for saying, urging Americans to be tolerant of each other's views. Bush said, respect for dignity of others can be found outside religion, just as intolerance is sometimes found within it.
Wow, that must have been, he must have choked on that.
Yeah, I really would never expect him to even admit that those without religion can be moral enough to respect the dignity of others. Now we talked about this earlier. I don't know, it was some weeks ago. You had read an article, I believe, where Bush they had an interview, and he was saying that he really felt the prayers from America.
Yes.
He felt them.
Yes.
He's at it again. In this time of testing for our nation, my family and I have been blessed by prayer from countless Americans. We have felt their sustaining power. Now, I urge President Bush to go ahead and contact as many scientists as possible to let them know how he feels this, so they too can have this objective test.
Yeah. Well, no, this is interesting, because when Bush gave that last, I think this was at the last prayer breakfast he did, or it was somewhere where he was speaking to a big group, and he told them that he felt their prayers, wafting over him, and he felt that he had this shield of prayer protection or something like that, right? And then 2 days after he gave that little public talk, he's sitting in the White House watching a football game, and he chokes on a pretzel, passes out, falls over, lands on his face, he's got this big shiner on his eye, and I'm just thinking, you know, okay, was like the prayer shield temporarily, you know, disconnected or something, or, you know, what sort of a prayer shield is it where, you know, you can't even protect against a choking on a person? No, you know, we're not making like that. The president chokes and hits his face, and you know, we don't like to see people get hurt. But I mean,
yeah, but I think immediately that set into a chain of events. I think John Ashcroft immediately put up an investigation into pretzel makers as terrorist ties, possibly.
Maybe they tried to exorcise the bag of pretzels.
Interesting.
To get all the evil.
So I give kudos to President Bush for mentioning that there are Americans that do not have any faith, and for actually saying that I believe that they can show dignity for others and respect for others. And I also, I don't have it here, but I want to mention this. President Bush has come under attack recently by the religious right because of his, he's been hiring and appointing a lot of homosexuals to different posts in different cabinets. And there was actually like an alert put out by Donald Wildman of the American Family Association and so on, with the list of all these homosexuals that he has associated with or actually appointed to important positions, and they're saying.
Now think of that for a minute. A list of homosexuals.
Yes.
I mean, is this not like the McCarthy blacklist where you have like, are you or have you ever been a communist and you get on the nasty list because of some affiliation you have?
Right, but Wildman, I believe it was from the American Family Association, said, hey, you know, we need to urge President Bush to get away from these anti-family values he's supporting by putting these homosexuals. So I want to give President Bush some kudos for doing that also.
Yeah, just crazy.
Doesn't mean I'm out ready to go out and vote for him, but
no. But he's showing
it's showing some sense.
Realizing that being
sense.
too hard line of an arch-conservative religious right type that will be bad for business. Anyway, before we go on to the next bit, remember our voice. We can go ahead and put our phone number up to call us live. It's 477-2288. Live call-in show, so call us up and talk to us, and you know, we will have all kinds of fun.
Okay, the last bit of news I have was very interesting. The first genetic evidence uncovered of how major changes in body shapes occurred during early animal evolution.
Yeah, this is rather colossal.
This goes to the mythical macroevolution that cannot happen according to many creationists.
Okay.
Biologists at the University of California, San Diego have uncovered the first genetic evidence that explains how large-scale alterations to body plans were accomplished during the early evolution of animals. In an advanced online publication February 6, the scientists show how mutations in regulatory genes that guide the embryonic development of crustaceans and fruit flies allowed aquatic, crustacean-like arthropods with limbs on every segment of their bodies to evolve 400 million years ago into a radically different body plan, the terrestrial six-legged insects. The achievement is a landmark in evolutionary biology, not only because it shows how new animal body plans could arise from a simple genetic mutation, but because it effectively answers a major criticism creationists had long leveled against evolution: the absence of a genetic mechanism that could permit animals to introduce radical new body designs.
Somebody on the atheist list, when we put up the link to this story last week, or whoever it was, mentioned that, you know, how strange it was that this particular article sort of focuses on that aspect of it, how it's an effective answer to a creationist criticism, because generally speaking, you know, most just full-time biologists, right, people who are out there in the field and they're doing this and doing all these studies, they really don't care, you know, they're focused on biology and doing their work,
right? And
you know, they really don't care what, you know, some creationists are saying about it, you know, because they're out there just trying to see what the evidence shows. And you know, the evidence shows what it shows, you know, and if what it shows happens to go ahead and like puncture some holes in some arguments, well, that's fine. But that's not what they're out there doing. They're not out there, oh, let's look for stuff that refutes what, you know, criticisms that creationists have. You know, they're just out there seeing what, you know, the genetic, you know, the whole tree of life basically shows us, and it happens to show us this. I mean, they've uncovered this. And that's the focus. It's just seeing what is out there and
right.
what can be determined by the available evidence. Science is not this act of A, looking for answers that sound good to you, or B, it's not about promoting or sustaining any individual's particular agenda, whether it's philosophical or religious or anti-religious or what have you. Okay, science just reveals what it reveals.
Right.
You know, you get out there and you dig in the dirt and you see what you see, and it's, you know, there's reality, and this is what a problem that a lot of people on the far religious right have with the whole principles of science, is that it's not this thing that guarantees easy answers. It's not this thing that will conveniently support your agenda when you want it to, you know, and it has this crippling capacity, science does, to sort of puncture the bubble of, you know, human self-importance. And I think that's a problem that a lot of folks have with it.
Yes.
Who don't understand science.
A scientist involved in this said, the creationist argument rests in part on the fact that animals have two sets of chromosomes, and that in order to get big changes, you'd need to mutate the same genes in both sets of chromosomes. It's incredibly unlikely that you would get mutations in the same gene in two chromosomes in a single organism. But in our particular case, the kind of mutation that's in this gene is a so-called dominant mutation. So you only need to mutate one of the chromosomes to get a big change in body plan. But this doesn't just end here. This has some may have some interesting possibilities. The discovery of this general mechanism for producing major leaps in evolutionary change has other implications for scientists. It may provide biologists with insights into the roles of other regulatory genes involved in more evolutionarily recent changes in body designs. Also, in addition, the discovery of this may show how this regulates limb development, how it may have an application improving the understanding of human disease and genetic deformities.
Oh, okay. So in other words,
this could have some,
so this could have implications in like modern medicine.
Oh yes, if you compare this gene to many other related genes, you can see that they share certain regions in their sequences. This may establish how not only in this gene but relatives of this gene in many different organisms actually work. A lot of these genes are involved in the development of cancers and many different genetic abnormalities, and they may explain how some of these conditions came to be.
Okay, so if we study, we can figure out maybe a way to eliminate these diseases and at the genetic level.
Yeah,
right?
which is fascinating. I mean, that's the thing.
That's great.
Any little discovery in science could end up having huge implications.
Far-reaching, yeah.
That you would never even begin to think of. So that's fascinating.
It is.
And
who was it that a couple of weeks ago, some lab now claims to have using therapeutic cloning techniques, like grown a kidney?
Yes, that was excellent.
It was about 2 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yes, a kidney that actually works.
Yeah, like, you know, cleans
produces urine, and they said they're a long way away from actual, you know,
making
organ farming.
Yeah,
but it's a huge step.
Yeah,
which is,
and and I can't imagine that anyone is out there objecting to this, because, you know, I've known guys who have needed like liver transplants and other sort of organ transplants, and you get on these mailing lists that are, you know, years long sometimes.
Yes.
And it's terrible, and you could die any minute sometimes from these, you know.
And a lot of the people that are against this are, of course, Christians and right wings, the right wing Christians.
Well, yeah, the real
that
far
would say
right,
you're playing God. But I have to digress, because I've never seen God make a whole new kidney for someone, so they don't have to be on a waiting list.
Yeah. But I mean, but you could level that criticism against any sort of form of medicine,
right?
Which is, you know, like even taking an aspirin to cure a headache. You know, anything that interferes with what you perceive,
what
you perceive to be how something should naturally work. I guess that's the rationale behind some of those folks on the fringe who are like refusing to get medical care for their children.
Yes.
Based upon what they claim is some sort of biblical edict, but it doesn't seem to me that I don't know of any passage in the Bible where it says, you know, and avoid all man-made medicine, and, you know, if you come down with some horrible sickness, pray, and, you know, and if you know, God feels like it, he'll do the, you know, and then he'll heal you. I mean, I know that there are claims of faith healing in the Bible, but there's nothing in there that says you should not.
You can't go to a doctor.
Yeah,
right,
yeah. So that's, I think, some, you know, the individual's interpretations of that. But anyway, we got a couple callers online, so we'll get to them in just a sec. Still got some congestion. So I hope I don't end up coughing too much throughout the show. There was just a little business from last week's show. Last week's show was a puzzle. I mean, it was a nice show, but it was almost like too nice of a show. All of our callers were really nice and friendly, and we had a good time talking to people. But it was almost like this big hug fest. It was kind of, we were a little nonplussed. But after the fact, we got apparently got a couple of emails from some folks. And Ashley, in fact, our crewman, forwarded me an email that he got somehow. instead of, usually it goes to, you know, folks go to atheist-community.org and they just send to the main club address. But there's a young woman who wrote, I think she was a woman, who wrote about, we very briefly during the news segment, we touched on the abortion issue, because it was like the 20th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and we talked about that. And this viewer got the impression that I was making this distinction between, like, you know, atheists equal pro-choice and Christians equal pro-life, and I didn't mean to make that distinction. If I did, that was my mistake in wording, and I didn't mean to do that. Because you can certainly, you know, come to an anti-abortion stance from a non-theistic perspective, and I also know many people who are theistic who think that, you know, women should have the right to choose. But the point that I was making was that, you know, these groups like Operation Rescue and the really active anti-abortion organizations are all, you know, religiously affiliated to some degree, and
it's probably a safe statement.
Yeah.
You're not stretching anything
yeah, I'm
there.
not. I mean, definitely Operation Rescue is, and the point that I was making was that I find it unfortunate that abortion has become this sort of religious, moral type issue. Not to say that it shouldn't be that, but I think that first and foremost, it needs to be regarded as a health issue and a medical issue.
Right.
And, you know, and I pointed out, you know, how the way to stop unwanted abortions and unwanted pregnancies from happening is you get some comprehensive sex education in the schools. Let kids know what the consequences are if they have this unprotected sex, where they're too young to know not only the physical ramifications, but the emotional ramifications of being sexually active. There's a lot of that going on too. But the irony is that the Christians who are vehemently anti-abortion are also anti this idea of sex education. Bush wants to do this thing where he has sex education classes that focus on abstinence. Although it has been shown that these kind of courses have been studied independently, and the abstinence-focused sex education classes aren't really any more effective at making kids abstain than just a regular, full-fledged, like health-based, you know, sex education class where you get the full picture of stuff. So that was the irony I was pointing out. But I did not intend to make the distinction that, you know, religious people are anti-choice.
Matter of fact, I know, and if I know we were going to talk about this, I would have looked it up, so I could have brought the website. I have actually seen atheist or free thinker pro-life groups. So they are out there, and
Yeah.
I wish I would have the website so we could put it up so y'all could check it out if you wanted.
Get that information next week. We'll try to search that up
and
we'll try to put that on the air next week. So we'll go ahead and go to callers, and I think like our guy on line 1 gave up on us, but we do have...
That was Clayton. Sorry, Clayton.
Yeah,
sorry you couldn't stay. Call back.
Yeah, please do.
We're on for a little while.
Yeah, we'll just go to John on 2 and see what he has to say about all this. Hello, John?
Hey.
Hey, you're on the air. What's up?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, how do y'all feel about drugs and things like that?
Well, like Bayer aspirin or the hard stuff. I'm kidding. I know what you mean. I certainly don't support any sort of chemical abuse or substance abuse. I've seen too many lives go down the commode by people, you know, on the part of people who do that. So, you know, I would encourage folks not to abuse their brains and abuse their bodies, because these are the only brains and bodies we have.
Right.
My
abortion.
Well, on the drugs, let me say that my particular view.
You look like you sniff coke.
I do?
Yeah.
No, I don't. My particular view is I think that personally think that a lot of drugs should be legalized. I think that we legalize many drugs today. Tobacco kills people. Alcohol, in my personal opinion, is worse than things like marijuana.
Weed should be legalized?
What's that?
You think marijuana should be legal?
I do. I personally do. This is my personal belief.
It's certainly a less, in many ways, less dangerous than tobacco. I mean, the problem is that the whole war on drugs that our government is fighting is farcical, because these are the same legislators who are combating, you know, marijuana, and then of course the stuff that we all know to be really nastily dangerous, like heroin and cocaine. Okay, that's fine. But at the same time, though, you know, you have the tobacco industry and its very effective lobby on Capitol Hill, and alcohol, you know, which are every bit as dangerous as, you know, in my opinion, when they're every bit as dangerous as cocaine. or anything that you shoot into your vein. If you want to talk about just abusing your body, I mean, I know.
When the cost to society in terms of cigarettes and tobacco and alcohol is horrendous every year, and yet they're perfectly legal.
Yeah.
I think it's a hypocritical stance by the government.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Now, what about prostitution?
I think that should. My personal beliefs. I think should be completely legal and regulated, so that the prostitutes should have to have a health stamp. You know, when they get tested, you know that it's safe.
It's like Amsterdam, right?
Like Amsterdam, or like many European countries, the government could tax it. It would then create an income base. As far as I'm concerned, if I'm an adult and I want to go pay another adult to have sex with me, it's nobody's business. It's two adults in a business transaction.
Yeah. Let me just go wing it here and say that what's wrong with prostitution is not that it's about folks having sex, okay? And it's not even that it's about folks having sex and a financial transaction is part of it. What's happened with prostitution is that because it has been driven underground, it is now affiliated with organized crime. You have these women who live lives of abuse and disease and horrible illness because they're driven out on the streets where they are constantly victimized. Not only are they victimizing themselves by taking on these horrible, by smoking crack and developing drug habits and not getting themselves checked out and getting, coming down with, goodness knows what diseases, but, they're just routinely beaten up. And it's become this sordid, it's been driven underground. And the reason it's been driven underground is because I think a lot of people in our culture, sexual mores in our culture are still very, very influenced by good old St. Augustine years ago, who said that the only permissible sex that could be had, after living his whole youth of debauchery,
right?
And then he came out and said the only permissible sex two people can have is A, if they're married, B, if they are Christians or actually Catholics, and C, if they're doing it for the express purpose of procreating and making more little Christians.
And D, if they don't enjoy it.
Yeah, and if they don't enjoy it. So, which after, living his carefree youth, I really don't think that he had the grounds to say that. But that's why, that's the only reason that prostitution has become this horrible underground criminal enterprise where you have abuse and death and disease.
And the damn cops, too. It's hard to find a good hoe nowadays.
Oh, yeah, I'm telling you.
Well, I don't know. We'll take your word for that.
Well, I think that there's no difference between prostitution and between society paying football players to destroy their bodies in front of our eyes. Those football players and boxers are using their body, specifically using their body to make money. Too. I don't think there's any difference.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Well, so, I don't know.
I may be, the liberal one. But I don't think there's any difference between a football player using his body to make money and a woman using her body to make money.
And the same goes for guys, too. Hell,
yeah.
We should be able to...
Yeah, good work if you can get it.
Yeah.
I can't.
I don't know if I go. Yeah, I put in about 2 years at the gym, but I don't think I'm quite cut out for that. Suffice to say, I mean, I don't see that there's another aspect to this, and I think that there is the fear that if this sort of thing isn't horribly demonized all the time, right? Then millions and millions of America's finest young daughters.
They're going to leave the workforce to become prostitutes
in mass. Yeah, that's just not the case. So okay, we lost.
I don't know if we may have lost you, John. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, thanks for calling. But that's the whole thing of. I've heard the similar arguments against pornography, which is that the people who are the most heated in their attitude against it have this idea that kids for some reason would find this stuff appealing in the first place. Maybe some would, right? But some might outgrow it, and particularly I don't see young girls looking at pornography and like having any appeal whatsoever. Especially of I just don't see some. Young kids looking, being anything but grossed out by, the money shots and the, right. Sort of, but there's this idea that some people have that, oh no, if we have a permissive attitude towards this stuff, then my daughter will want to become a porn starlet. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about?
As opposed to having an educational attitude, as in not educational.
Because it's so much more appealing than being, I guess, a doctor or a politician or something else, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't see that this is. you know, when people indicate this, that, oh, it's so appealing and everyone will flock to it if we don't, you know, I think they're revealing a little something about themselves.
That's right. That's right.
Let's go on to Cliff and see what he has to allow. That was, hello, Cliff?
Yeah, hello.
Hey, you're on the air. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I see that you got a flag there on your table.
We sure do.
And I'd like to make a comment and have y'all make a comment.
Okay.
What do you think about all the other countries here? And we're fighting, we got our soldiers in other countries and we're causing a bunch of trouble and stuff. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm going to defer to our military veteran here in a minute, but I do have one thing to say. And that is, I don't consider us the troublemakers over there, all right?
Yeah.
We didn't ask for this conflict. September 11th started out a perfectly normal day, and it could have continued to be a perfectly normal day. The terrorist organizations chose to do what they did, so they're getting what's coming to them.
But
now, you know, that's my whole view on the war, you know. I mean, but, you know, should we be out there? I mean, of course, I don't think we should just be out there bombing indiscriminately and targeting anybody other than those exact perpetrators who deserve to be targeted. Unfortunately, in wars, you can, you know, things go awry. But again, we wouldn't be over there at all doing what we're doing, dropping any bombs on anybody, if they didn't do what they had done on September 11th.
Would you consider China and Russia an enemy of ours?
Well, let me take over from there and do the little the liberal counterpoint here, and I'd like to point out once again that these are my own personal views. I don't hold, you know, anything say that anybody else as part of the atheist community of Austin necessarily holds my views, but I think that a lot of the terrorist attacks could have been avoided if way back when Reagan hadn't been so determined to get those bad commies that he went ahead and armed and trained the terrorists that now use that training and weapons that we gave them against us. Russia would have fallen under its own weight eventually anyway, as it did do. And I mean, I really don't think that we would have such a problem with terrorists if we ourselves hadn't armed those terrorists and trained those terrorists. And I think that
that is a good point. I mean, we made Saddam Hussein and we made Osama bin Laden, so we are kind of reaping what we've sown there. But at the same time, I think, you know, an attack on our shores, we're fully justified.
Sure, right. We should go get the people that did it. But I think that I think that it would be short-sighted of us to not look at history and say, what did we do that could have had some influence, and how can we make sure we don't do those things again? And I think that there are other areas where we have gone on nation building, where I don't think it was necessarily justified. We didn't nation build, we wanted to mold the nation to be one of us. Which is kind of arrogant. To some extent. And I served in the military for 10 years. I'm patriotic. I believe in the American form of government, but I believe that it's also a very large world with lots of different you know, things and things that go on.
I believe America's being set up for an ambush, and that's without a shadow of a doubt. I just know that Russia and China and other countries are going to play a big role, and they're coming to our land, not there. They're coming over here, and there'll be a day when they're going to make it too. They're planning it all. That's my belief. I believe they're making plans now, and they're just waiting, and this is just part of the strategy that they're using right here. Us playing around with the terrorists and stuff like that.
So you think it's kind of the terrorist stuff is kind of a diversion?
Well, I think maybe
to make us take our focus off of other things.
Well, I think maybe something like that, but I really believe that Russia and China really has it out for us, and there's no doubt in my mind that they will make a sneak attack on us someday. And they have weapons lots of weapons. They have it stored up. I mean, I'm sure they have all kinds of weapons and stuff, but I just really believe they can bring their men over here to our country. And I know people say, well, they can't do it because we'll see them before they make it here. But I really believe that they're going to fill our country with men, and they're going to succeed.
No, they're not going to succeed, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because we have a right to bear arms, and tons of Americans have weapons and ammunition, stuff that we don't even know is stockpiled and stored away, and any foreign army that entered our soil would be in so much trouble.
So we got cash somewhere.
I think that we have enough weapons, personally owned weapons on our soil, that you'd have every man, woman, and possibly child grabbing something somewhere and giving the fight back. I think that if you're saying if Russia or China or any country were to do something, I think it would have to be, one, a weapon of mass destruction, and the only smart way would be that if we didn't know where it came from, which means they're going to have to smuggle a bomb or something into this country, because if they launch anything, we're going to counterattack right away.
Well, when the September 11th got hit, just 2 planes or 3 planes, I mean, it just put this whole United States in a big
Sure.
Yeah, but you know, I
Could
think
you imagine what would happen if they caught us off guard and, you know, and actually made an attempt to do something to us?
But the fortunate thing is, though, that the silver lining about that horrible day is that I don't think we'll be caught off guard again anytime soon. I think that we're aware now that we're living in a much changed world, that the enemy is different, and there's a lot that's going to be very sneaky and very nasty, and I think our intelligence apparatus is maybe a little more on the ball than it used to be, and like David said, Americans just aren't the kinds of people who are willing to sit back and be victimized. So
I'm on.
Yeah, so it's you know, the whole thing is yeah, you can formulate all of these worst case scenarios that you like, but remember that you know, some of these you tend to be kind of take for granted the idea that America will be in a position where we'll allow ourselves to just roll over like a submissive puppy and be conquered, and I don't know any American who's willing to do that. Anyway, we got to get on to our next guy. Do you have anything else for us? Or?
Well, I'd like to say that we have 280 million people here in the United States, counting kids and everything, but China alone has 300 million fighting Army soldiers, and that just outnumbers us right there. I mean, and they have it out for us.
But, well, you know, but again, that's, well, we got to make sure our politicians do their job and make sure everyone's kept in line.
I'd just like to bring that up to y'all. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks so much.
And I'd also like to point out, from my military experience, numbers don't necessarily mean anything. America has a habit of overcoming larger numbers of soldiers. With matter of fact, even when America has had inferior equipment, which happened many times during World War II against Germany. And I just think that if anybody was foolish enough to set foot with their soldiers on American soil, they'd probably be in for a big surprise.
Yeah, but anyway. But yeah, I just see these chicken little scenarios it's easy to get yourself all worked up and worried about them, but you know, trust in your American citizens even if you don't trust in your government, because you know, there are a lot of really pissed off people in this country on September 12th.
Yes.
And I mean, if you had just turned everybody in America who owned, you know, loose, it would probably be a much uglier scenario than it is now. But you know, but yeah, it was a wake-up call to us.
Certainly.
Certainly, we had been, our intelligence apparatus was slack. You know, the Clinton administration, I've heard them take a lot of criticism for, you know, letting the military slack off, and I'm sure some of that's justified. So, you know, but we're not there anymore. I think we've had a reality check, and it's all going to be better. Let's go to John on line 1, see if he has anything to say about that. Hello, John?
Hey, I just want to say this to Sniper.
I'm sorry?
I want to say this to Sniper.
Go ahead.
The guy over with the bald head looks like my dick. Well, I don't think we'd have a terrorism problem.
Yeah. Look,
all right.
Here's the thing about this show, all right? You want to call up and act like a grown-up, we'll be happy to talk to you, okay? But because this is where the big boys play. All right, let's go to John on line 2. Hello, John. Bill on line 2. You're on the air. How's it going?
That's fine. It's actually Phil, but that's fine.
It's Phil. Sorry about that.
Sorry, we
missed. It happens all the time on the phone.
Okay.
That last gentleman, not the profanity gentleman, but the gentleman before that. I think he needs to calm down. Now, this idea of being sneak attacked by Russia and China, in addition to the other nasty habits the federal government has, is one habit they have of always creating these boogeymen behind every in every alley, I guess. That we always got to have somebody to vent our rage against. You know, a couple of years ago it was China, or maybe even a year ago it was China, and now it's these Arab terrorists. And you know, the chances of China attacking us are practically nil. The fact of the matter is, we have 7,200 nuclear warheads. They have about, from what I understand, less than 100. They'd be foolish to try and attack us with their tactical warheads. And with regard to their army, half of that 300 million man army they have is used to control their own population. And to get those folks across the Pacific Ocean would be a monumental task. And if we couldn't knock them out by the time they reached Hawaii, we'd be in deep trouble. So,
that's right.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's just totally ridiculous.
Yeah, again, there's this whole, I mean, you're right, people need to just kind of simmer down. But the point is that I think that one thing we've found since September was that war in the 21st century will be a little different, okay? I mean, it was, you know, here we have, like you said, 7,000 nuclear warheads, and we have this, you know, we have this highly trained army and specialists and all of it. And yet what happened was we were attacked by 19 civilians with box knives. And it was a completely unexpected scenario that no one really could have trained for or anticipated. And so we're having to look at this idea that, yeah, it could just be not this big, massive invasion of, you know, D-Day type invasion of our shores, but the next war could just be, you know, some dude with a backpack nuke,
That's right.
you know, manages to climb the fence at some nuclear power plant,
Yep.
and set it off. And, you know, this could be down to, I mean, we're down to like numbers of, I'm not so much worried about a 200 or 300 million man army as I am about a small cell of lone nuts. You know, half a dozen guys now can change the course of world history. And that's what we need to concentrate on.
Well, I disagree with that. The notion that this couldn't be anticipated. I think that, you know, I've brought this up on your program a couple of times before. Is that it seems to me the atheist community, not just of Austin, but I guess there's a national atheist community, and it seems to me, I'm not a card-carrying member, but it seems to me there should be some protest of some kind with regard to our foreign policy on Israel. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the Israelis brutalized the Palestinians. There's currently been press reports that even their own army reservists refuse to serve in the occupied territories because they say that that's basically brutalization, starvation, along those lines of the Palestinians. Well, you don't really see it a lot in what a lot of folks call the mainstream media, but because this is supposed to be a religious neutral country, here we are giving $3 billion a year to essentially what is a self-admitted, you know, religious country,
Theocratic.
Israel. And you know, there ought to be a strong case made that we shouldn't be supporting these folks. And out of Osama bin Laden's own pie hole, he said that our support for Israel and our troops in Saudi Arabia were the reason behind September 11th. So,
well,
you know, the line can be drawn that you know, we knew the Israelis were brutalizing the Palestinians. We knew everybody in the pretty much in the Arab world hated us for it. I mean, I think it was pretty well could have been expected.
Well, yeah. Well, what I meant was the physical form that the attack took, not that we were attacked at all. I think that we may have been expecting something different and weren't actually expecting planes crashing into skyscrapers. That's what I meant there. But I think that you're right in that we have made a great many foreign policy mistakes. And a lot of it is coming home to roost now. And Mary McManamy, who is on the nonprofits and he works on this show, told me that she had, some years ago, she was dating this guy who was of Palestinian descent. And when he was a little boy, like I think it was 1966 or something, she said he had very clear memories of these Israeli soldiers just barging into their home, saying, "All right, you don't live here anymore. This is ours now." And so yeah, I myself, I agree with you. I'm a little puzzled as to why we just have been so thoroughly supportive of Israel all the time. Maybe somebody who's better versed in our foreign policy past can call up and explain it to me. But
well, it's not just that, and I guess I'm going on a tirade here, but every time something comes before the United Nations, there was a human rights conference down in South Africa, I guess last year.
They kicked
Who
us
were
off,
the only
right?
two countries?
no, we turned up our nose at that. Yeah.
We walked out on that conference in South Africa, and because we had veto power on the National Security Council of the UN, we were the only country to veto a sanction against Israel for their treatment of the Palestinians. But I'm going to let you go at that note. But one other thing I want to get in real quick is I wish you wouldn't demonize heroin that bad. It's really not that bad a drug.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. I would disagree with you there. I don't know anybody who's had a...
Well, actually, I actually saw a study that showed that it was an anonymous study because the people would not reveal themselves. Obviously, there was quite a number of doctors that were addicted to heroin and used it on a daily basis in controlled amounts to get through their days. Wow. And were never ever known.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea to do.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying that
I
don't know that it's.
The
it's
caller's
right to demonize.
The caller is entitled to his opinion on that. I respectfully disagree.
Okay, we have somebody on one.
But we don't have a name for one, so I'm just going to go to Peter on line 3, and then we'll get a name for
on one.
Yeah, the caller who is on line 1, and see what he. Hello, Peter.
Hey, what's happening?
Hey, you're on the air. What's up?
Oh, I just wanted to point out that a lot of people who tend to be really paranoid about conspiracies and whatnot tend to be kind of religious too, and I think it's kind of funny because it takes a really grandiose belief in some kind of dark force or whatever in order to really conceive that there could be such a hardcore cooperation and a system that is also so dark and evil. And
yes, I worked for the federal government for 10 years, and I just can't imagine them being competent enough to have a large conspiracy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the government that just gave us
to organize something like that, right?
That's right.
Yeah, this is the government that just gave us the Sacagawea $1.
Yeah.
You know. And,
so I've always been a little surprised. Plus, if you're very, very religious, then you generally, it seems to me that you would want to go by what the Bible, if you are religious on a Christian basis, go by what the Bible says, to not worry about these earthly things and just trust in God. Yeah. But they're awful concerned with the conspiracy theories.
Well, I think, Revelation being a book that can be interpreted,
any way you
12
want.
ways from Sunday, that could probably feel the... I have my own theory on my personal opinion on folks who subscribe to various political conspiracy theories and what have you. Now, it's not to say, okay, conspiracies have happened in history, okay, and that's not uncommon. But this whole idea of like dark forces, or the Trilateral Commission, or these guys who meet in secret rooms, kind of X-Files-ishly, with the blinds drawn,
a body of 5 men that control the course of the country.
Yeah. Now that and the whole idea that even anything like that could be, first off, how did these guys get this power to wield in the first place? How did they gain this? These few men gain this influence on such a broad scale.
It's supposed to date back for like ever and ever.
Yeah, like to the Knights Templar or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Throughout all the years, nobody has ever decided to just have a soul. Or I mean, I don't really believe in a soul, but I'm saying nobody's conscience or morality ever got to them and caused them to expose it.
Yeah.
No matter how frightened you might try to make people, you just can't guarantee that kind of allegiance for that and those kind of any numbers that would be significant.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, I mean, there's no. Again, David, you may have a little experience with your history in the military or something like that, but it seems to me that there's probably no secret so great that somebody can't be twisted out of.
As a matter of fact, I was just watching something on KLRU today. They had a big thing on spying during World War II, and they had spies at every level. The Soviets had spies at even the president's personal executive secretary, he was a spy for the Soviets.
Oh, good grief.
I mean, everybody was a spy.
When was this, in the 50s?
1940, during World War II.
Oh, during Roosevelt's own
staff and they know this because they've uncovered and decrypted Soviet documents.
Okay.
I mean, it was fascinating. Yeah. So it's just, you can't keep these sort of things secret. It comes out at some point in time.
Eventually.
Yeah. And the only way to keep a secret is to not tell anybody and keep it yourself. So
the best way to keep a secret is to be like the only guy who knows.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. As soon as you tell somebody else, it's not a secret anymore.
Yeah. So I don't know. And I've also said in the past that I think a lot of the thinking that goes behind folks who develop these elaborate theories of how things work is this whole idea that maybe it's wanting to be part of something important and having this kind of secret knowledge that no one else has maybe imparts a sense of importance to you. It's like, if anybody knew what I knew, they'd come and get me.
Right.
Our whole culture kind of makes us that way, I mean, we all think we're in a movie, we're the superhero that's got inside information. Or
we all think we're on TV. Oh, wait, I am.
But yeah, no, that's a good point. I think there is a distinct problem in our culture of folks not really being able or caring even to distinguish fantasy from reality. So, anyway, anything else for us, Peter?
Oh, no.
All right, man.
Thanks.
Well, hey, we appreciate you watching the show, and you take care and call us back anytime.
I'll do it.
All right.
All right, later.
I just want to extend an invite to all of our unbelievers in the Peanut Gallery that we have our bagel shop meetings at 10:30 in the mornings on Sunday at Hot Jumbo Bagels. That's 307 West 5th Street. It's like about a block west of Antone's. And these are meetings that are just for unbelievers only. It's a little social gathering. If you want to meet other atheists and just come by, say hi. Okay, we have Greg on line 1, and let's see if he has an opinion on all this. Greg?
Yeah, yes.
Hey, you're on the air. What's up?
Not a whole lot. How are y'all doing?
We're good.
All right, I just want to say that y'all do a good job.
Thank you.
And I don't really, the question I have is kind of a question of epistemology, really. The term atheist, it seems to be, kind of a relative term, not from an epistemological point of view where you're just put together the atheist and technically you come up with without a God or without God believing, but it seems to me that atheism could be very relative to the individual, and I was just wondering what you think somebody who calls himself an atheist should be, and what you think atheism means to yourself.
Okay. You want to go first? Sure.
I hold to. I think that words have meaning, and I think that's when I'm debating with theists a lot of time, and they want to talk to me about their concept of a God. We have to go long and hard on. I need to know what you mean when you say God. We can't go anywhere until I know what you're talking about. So when you say atheist, without God, without a belief in a deity, I follow the hard definition of that. And I myself don't have a belief in any supernatural entity or deity based on, from what I see, to be a lack of evidence. I hold that same standard. I would assume that anybody who told me they were an atheist felt the same way that I did, unless they let me know I feel differently. And then I would be curious as to what exactly did they feel about that.
Yeah. Well, wasn't it? I believe I've heard that the the word atheist was coined by the Romans. It's the Latin root, and the term was coined to refer to Christians.
Yes.
People who did not believe in the Olympian gods, which Christians don't. This also comes up in we've kind of have a fact question on our website about this, and dealing with what precisely does the terminology mean, and also what does the word atheist mean as opposed to being, for example, agnostic. And George Smith, who's a prominent atheist writer, came up with definitions, ways to define both those terms that I think are very useful, which is that terms Gnosticism and agnosticism refer to knowledge and the limits of a person's knowledge, whereas theism and atheism are terms that refer to what a person believes. So knowledge, belief, and the two terms cover different areas of your experience.
Sure.
The only statement that I can make about the existence or non-existence of God that I can say with any certainty is factual. Is I don't know. So in that regard, I would be agnostic. I do not possess the knowledge, definitely one way or the other, of whether or not a supreme being does or doesn't exist, or a God, or the God of Christianity or some other religion. However, do I believe that there is one? Well, I don't. And the reason I don't is because the definitions, as you said, of God that are given to me by people who believe in God and want me to believe in their God, if the definitions don't stand up to scrutiny, or if they're not backed up by solid evidence, then I have no reason to believe. When I have a reason to believe, when I have sufficient evidence, then I will change my beliefs. But until then, if you don't have a reason to believe in something, then you're not obligated to believe it.
And then you should qualify that by also saying that if you were to find evidence that the God of, let's say, the Christian Bible were to exist, you may then say, there's evidence, I am forced to believe that he exists, but that does not mean I will follow him.
Right. Well, there's
which is totally two different things.
And then of course that piece of evidence would have to be examined left, right, and center. I mean, you'd have to is this really evidence of this? Am I looking at this properly? What is there anything else that corroborates this piece of evidence? It's not just like it's like any scientific field. It doesn't hinge just on one thing. So bing, here, this proves our point. No, it's a vast field of study that you have to look at before you can conclude anything any one way or another on a scientific basis. Now, Christians will sometimes counter this by saying, well, you can't prove a God doesn't exist, so it makes just as much sense to go ahead and believe as it does to not believe. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. The people making the positive claims, you don't go out to prove negative claims. I mean, you can't prove a negative. That's a tenet of logic. The burden of proof lies upon the person making the positive claim, i.e., a deity exists
Right.
who bears the burden of
But
proof.
in the same way that
supply-
most Christians would not believe in unicorns or leprechauns.
Yeah, I mean, you can't prove that unicorns and leprechauns don't exist. But does it make sense to go ahead and believe that they do because of the fact that you don't have evidence that they don't? Well, of course not. So that's
kind of our roundabout long
Yeah.
way of maybe answering your question.
Well, yeah, I was just asked a question of whether or not you guys, believed whether that if there was any possibility of an afterlife, or maybe there was some continuity to, this big problem of existence. And I mean, you'll make a lot of references and points that I actually agree with, but at the same time, drawing the distinction between science and religion, I think that religion is a crock to some extent, but that science gives me hope for some belief in a God. And thank you very much for y'all's input. And
Okay.
there's just a problem of choice and belief. And
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll address that, but we appreciate your call.
Thank you
for
very
calling.
And thanks very much. I would disagree with you just like semantically there. I don't think that it's all just, we were talking about this earlier with the whole debate, the creation evolution debate
Right.
coming up. It's not really, it really isn't a matter of choice. I mean, if you're trying to examine a particular question, you've got to look at what the evidence shows you, and you have to look at that dispassionately. And if you have a belief system that becomes undone as a result of what you're seeing in the evidence, then, the thing that you have to do, as much as you might not want to, is say, well, this is disconfirming evidence to my belief system. Maybe I need to revise or let the belief system go.
Hans and Fleischmann really, really wanted to believe in cold fusion.
Yes.
And a lot of other scientists did too, because it would make a wonderful
Excellent
way
example.
to produce cheap energy, easily, in ways that we had never thought of before, because it was supposedly impossible. And once the theory was put under scientific scrutiny, it was abandoned.
Yeah.
Because it didn't hold water. It wasn't true. And there were lots of people that would have loved to have seen cold fusion be true.
Sure, yeah, but what we want and the way reality is sometimes don't necessarily jibe. Let's see, we have LeRoy on 2. We'll take him.
LeRoy on 2?
Yeah. Well, we'll go ahead and see what he's got to say. I thought I had something else to say, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't. My little thought just went. All right, LeRoy.
Hey, how you doing?
We're
How you
good.
doing?
What's up?
Hey, do you like black people?
Of course I
Sure.
do. Why shouldn't I?
I think black people, that's what's really messing up this nation. Black people. We gotta
Yeah.
pay their welfare, all that dumb nigger shit.
Okay. I would strongly suggest a big tube of Vaseline to remove your head from your redneck ass. All right? Tim on 3. All right, Tim, hi.
Hey guys,
How you doing?
as usual.
Are you there, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, we
what
have
do you got
a
going on?
problem.
You guys posed a question a while ago on how could they keep the conspiracy that vast, that secret. And I think that was kind of vague on defining the conspiracy. I think if you define the conspiracy as bringing a new world order or centralized world power structure in, if that's the definition of the conspiracy,
Well, we were talking about conspiracies in general. We're not conspiracy
well, the big, dark,
experts.
super
I'm just
dark
saying,
one that you were referring to.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to keep that secret when you change the minds. I mean, think about 20 years ago, the United States mind frame. We would have never accepted fighting under UN flags or, the centralization of power that's just easing into our society. That conspiracy is really easy to conceal if you changes everybody's mind to accept the conspiracy.
Well, I don't know that there has been too much that they have attempted to hide, at least in terms of, for example, over in Europe, with the adoption of the euro and attempting to sort of, create like a generalized European economy. I mean,
Even
I don't.
the Europeans wouldn't have accepted that 30 years ago.
Yeah, but again, it's a changing world, and they're looking maybe at the practical benefits of having one currency as opposed to 12 or 15 that are all within you being traded off within this area that is geographically about, maybe even smaller than the United States. So
Well, it's a
I don't
super
know that.
idea.
Yeah, but again, I don't know that. I don't see a whole lot. Maybe because you wouldn't see these sorts of things. But as we said, we're not conspiracy experts.
But what is happening is a change in society happening, and conspiracy theorists are forming their theories around that, or were the conspiracy theorists right the whole time, and what they predict is just coming to fruition? It makes much more sense than saying that a small group of people are controlling these world affairs from a long time ago and it's all coming to pass, to conspiracy theorists shaping current events to fit their theory. Makes much more sense.
Well, you guys know my theory. Mine was way back.
Okay.
But that New World Order structure, I mean, that's not something I'm adopting to a brand new theory.
Yeah. Well, the world is, like I said, this is a much different world than it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. We have instantaneous global communication. It's very unlikely that something could happen in the most remote corner of the world, and it's very possible that anybody on the earth could know about it within seconds. And so, because of that, there is going to be just by virtue of the technology and the communication. The way that has increased and the amount of information that is out there, I think you are going to see more of a coming together of peoples and maybe ultimately of governments and what have you. Now, whether or not this turns out to be a good thing or a bad thing for the people at large, I think you have to look at the specific political situations that are going on and determine at that point, the benefits or the liabilities. Clearly, there are political philosophies that are diametrically opposed to those in the West, those in Europe, those in America. So I don't see that there is going to be, just from a practical consideration, any sort of possibility that the UN or anybody else could just suddenly, come out and make one set of rules and laws and governing body for everybody. It just wouldn't take.
They already do.
Well, no, because you have individual nations like America and many other nations who have, for example, veto powers within like the Security Council and the various structures of the UN. It would be, we couldn't, no one nation, I think, can really expect to be able to act unilaterally against other nations. That's what the UN is partly for, to sort of serve as this body where everybody can kind of come together and negotiate rather than just setting off wars every time they have a disagreement. But at the same time, I don't know that
the UN now.
Yeah, but I don't know that the UN has or should have that power to just sort of say, well, boom, this is how everybody's going to do their business across the board. And if they're trying to do that, they shouldn't be trying to do that, and we need.
Well, they are. GATT, things like this. These are global economic structures saying this is how it's going to be done, no matter what your U.S. sovereign law says.
Well, but you have to look at the individual circumstances. I'm not a political science expert. Hopefully, maybe we can get someone calling the show who can respond to you more effectively than we can. But
well, I would say just ask yourself this question: 20 years ago, do you think the American public would be even slightly open to the idea of a universal currency? 20 years ago, they would probably have, never forgotten word here soon.
Yeah.
Now today, we'd be pretty open. Yeah, global currency. Wow, great
idea.
Okay,
but societal change, it's kind of a non sequitur here. That there has been a change in societal attitudes over 20 years does not necessitate that there's a conspiracy to do it.
Yeah, 40 years ago, racist ideas like the one expressed by our previous caller were considered to be the norm.
And protected by law, even though laws were there against that sort of thing, they were still protected by law.
So you're right. You can't automatically infer from the fact that there has been some sort of change in public attitude that maybe there's just ugly stuff going on behind the scenes. But that's not to say that there isn't. But of course, I like to give people a little more credit for being individuals and being able to think for themselves and not just be lorded over by these secret cabals. But anyway, we got to go on to our next caller.
Discussion, guys. No, appreciate you letting me in.
Yeah, appreciate your call and calls back any old time.
Wow.
Okay.
Mary on one?
It was Mary on one. Air one. Hello, Mary?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I can't help but see a change in societal attitudes as a good thing.
Oh.
Well, depends on the change. Depends on what the change is moving towards. If it's moving towards something that is, more of an attitude that we should respect other views. We should, that's a good thing. But then there's no reason to think that the pendulum couldn't swing back to where we were in the 50s, where, you know, black people had to sit in the back of the bus and all that, you know. So depends on the attitude that's changing, you know, and how it's changing.
That's true, but with all of the Enron stuff, and that's why I'm glad I'm watching you today, is because you're taking my mind off Enron. Because that thing is going to radically change business as it's done in America. Because I studied accounting,
yeah,
and even
that would be a good change.
Even to a freshman college student, you could see how a crook could really work that system, okay?
Sure.
But to get to the point about, I've been subjected to some religious outreach recently.
Did you feel ministered to?
Excuse me?
Did you feel ministered to?
Well, yes, I did, and I'm calling to cry on somebody's shoulder. But the idea, the main idea that they gave me was that if we let God run the world, run us, that everything's going to be really okay, and that we're going to have enough to eat, everybody's going to have enough to eat, and it's just going to be this wonderful place where the lion's going to lay down with the lamb and all of that. But, you know, I've been thinking a lot about means and ends lately, and I'm thinking, haven't we got examples of theocracy? I mean, wasn't Europe during the Middle Ages basically a theocracy?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and look what fun that was.
Well,
You know, and what they're
fun for all of the,
offering,
you know, priesthood who are banking in on it, but yeah.
What they're basically offering me is an insult to my intelligence.
I'm with you on that.
I mean,
fully agree.
Because I know better, and I'm just this pee-wee minor attempt at a human being, and
don't sell yourself short.
I know better than that, and so I'm polite anymore. I'm polite to everybody, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's going to make the world a better place if I stick to it. At least it's going to make it a better place for me, because I'll know that I'm doing the right thing, and that's the point I wanted to make. As fellow atheists, which we are, okay? There's no way I'm going to, just because I'm a moral person doesn't mean that I learned it anywhere else. It might have come out of my intelligence. Surprise, surprise. But what I really wanted to say is this is where we've got the chance to overcome this last hump, okay? Is to prove that we can be good people without that. I think it's the most important thing that atheists can do at this moment in history. Just another example, just as a role model. And I'm a role model not only to people, I'm a role model to animals, okay? They know I have a kind heart, and people watch how I relate to animals, and they can see that if these creatures that are just as pure as it gets can see my real inner self, they start to look at me differently and start to say, hey, well, maybe she's an atheist, but maybe she's not all bad.
Well, you know, my cat watches this show, and every time you call, my cat acts a little nicer when I come home.
Well, I'd like to meet your cat.
No, I know your point. I mean, I've done stuff. I've like, you know, I've seen, you know, I got very strange looks from a friend of mine one night because I found an injured bird in a parking lot and insisted on driving him to the animal emergency clinic.
That's right.
So it just, again, I was like, dude, it's a bird. It's like, you know, well, no. And I kind of went into this explanation about how we're all from the same genetic pool, and, you know, this life is a life. And so, but anyway, we appreciate your input, Mary, and it's always fun when you call. We're down to like the last 7 minutes. We got 2 more callers on the line, so we want to go ahead and get to them. But hey, I totally agree with you that atheists just ought to set a good example and live by it, and just let other people see the example we set.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for calling,
Bye.
Mary. Mary's one of our regulars, and she's always fun to hear from. Okay, we have Sam on too. We'll just Sam, we're going to be able... Sam?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, we're doing fine. We're down to like the last 5 minutes, so we got time for one question from you.
All right, I'm just wondering, you know how everyone's atheist, or y'all are atheists and everything like
Well,
that?
we're atheists.
Yes, we're atheists.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, why y'all, like, why are you guys atheists, you know?
Okay,
why
well...
don't you believe in religion and stuff like that?
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and we'll answer you, and we appreciate your call. Take care. Well, I don't know. Just the short version is I grew up, had a religious upbringing, and decided that I wasn't convinced of the claims that were being made to me and didn't have sufficient evidence to believe them. And so, as a consequence, I do not. That's not to say that will never, ever, ever change, but I'm the sort of person who forms my opinions about things based upon what the evidence is that I see. And I don't see sufficient evidence in a supernatural deity. David?
Same thing. I was raised fundamentalist Christian, attended Christian college, majored in theology to become a minister, which is where I became an atheist. Once I actually looked at the Bible, looked at the claims of religion, I couldn't follow it in good conscience. Same thing.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of atheists come out of seminaries, don't they? Yeah, okay, well, we have Jeff D. on line 3. He'll be our final caller for the day. Yeah, Jeff?
Oh boy, I'm so privileged.
Yeah, what up? Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Hey, how you feeling?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I sound a little weird. I'm still getting over this cold.
Yeah,
well, maybe
if
if you pray and take your medicine and maybe visit the doctor, you'll get better.
Yes. We'll send our prayer shield out to you.
Oh boy. Thanks. Well, I'm glad you got that call from the prophet Tim.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because that just is an excellent example of the horrible damage that's been done to humanity by religion. Where did, you look at this whole prophecy thing, right? That there's going to be an evil one world government, and that's going to be the sign that the world's about to end and we're all going to be destroyed and all this stuff. Where did the idea that getting along with other people and being able to work with other people was a bad thing come from? Well, I know it's more than 20 years old. He's talking about, 20 years ago would Americans have, worked alongside those, those darkies from across the sea? I know it's more than 20 years old, and I know it's at least 50 years old because that's the kind of attitude that was behind the McCarthy era, right? And I know that ultimately it comes from a particular sort of interpretation of the Bible that. And I don't know where that. I don't know enough of the Bible to be able to point out where it does come from. But it's fundamentalist ministers who tell us this crap, right? That when people get along, when we don't have conflict, when we have actual peace, then that's a bad thing. And that's a sign of the end time.
That's right. The Antichrist is going to bring about peace, and all the nations are going to come together.
Like, good grief.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't get it either. First off, though, I don't know that these fears of one world government. First off, I think that for one thing, I don't know that we'll ever see one governmental body governing the earth.
No,
because
I don't either. But
there are
that's
practical
not the
geographical considerations to take into account there. But even if you had something like Europe coming together under one economy,
right?
Or opening up trade, but from the Americas, all the way from Canada through South Americas, and trying to, get people interacting with one another. This whole idea that is somehow dangerous and bad,
right,
is very peculiar to me, and it seems to me that it can only come from this idea that doing so will poison somehow our individual precious culture, and it seems to me that you can only formulate that idea if you have this preconception in your head that it's all us good, them bad.
Exactly.
And they're, instead of just wanting to reach out to us with this gesture of friendship, they have this insidious plan that they're not telling us, and then when our guard is down, they're going to pounce.
Right. Exactly. I mean, look at the history of Europe, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
we have like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
So history's short.
Yeah, he can get it.
Okay, but would we rather have world wars starting in Europe, or would we rather have Europe united? Boy, I don't know if we'll ever have a world government either. But to preemptively say that it's automatically bad to even think about a thing like that is just horrifyingly evil.
Well, it's paranoid, and it's again, it has to do with this idea. It's this presumption that you get, and you get it within the confines of Christianity itself, that people are bad. They're innately bad and sinful.
Yeah.
Which is underlying premise.
Well, the religious people, you must recall, are worried that there's going to be one world controlled by one entity, but of course it will be peaceful when their one entity destroys that and rules the world.
Yeah.
So
ask the same religionists what they'd think about, a single Christian world government. They love that.
Yeah,
they love that. They just happen to know they're not going to win.
But if you're trying to forge alliances with these people who believe in these different things, then that's a little frightening. And we had Dr. Strangelove with General Jack D. Ripper. He'll poison our precious bodily
He's
fluids.
looking at the big board.
Yeah.
So
our purity of essence will be impurified. Hey, is Godless Gamers happening tomorrow?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I'll send out an email.
Send out an email to the group. And hey, thanks for your input. But
thanks, guys.
And hope you're back in shape for next week's radio show. And thanks for calling, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
All right, and so that's it for us today. Join us next week, 4:30, same time. Thank you, David.
Oh,
Christians, we don't hate you.
We just think you're wrong.
Bye. Timing.
Perfect.
Timing.